G'day there, Rich here. So, the purpose of today's video is essentially to install Studio One as a Studio One Plus subscriber. Get it set up so that we're sort of ready to do things like recording and that sort of stuff. And to do a little bit of orientation so that we know where things are. So it'll be a fairly lengthy video, but the idea here is that if you're relatively new to Studio One, well, you haven't even yet installed it, or maybe you hadn't got there yet and you were thinking, okay, I like the look of this software. How easy is it to do all the stuff that I might have already done on another DAW? Or you've never used a DAW and you just want to know how we set things up and how we install things. So we're going to do this essentially from scratch. So what I've done is I've wiped my system of Studio One so that I can sort of walk you through that process. So we'll do this immediately. I'll try to fill in the gaps where we've got things happening, like loading, downloading, that sort of stuff. And of course, that'll be an opportunity for me to ask you if you have any questions that you want to put in the comments section below. Happy to answer those, and I'll do my best to get to them as swiftly as I can. But as with all things, I understand that there's going to be people that use Studio One that are more sort of technically proficient, they're more computer literate, and there's also people that are going to be new to this, okay? They'll be coming to it after a number of years hiatus. So let's have a look at how we do this. So, and this is going to be really informal, by the way, so we're not going to go through, super quick. We're going to do it at a normal pace that most people will be able to understand. And I think that for many people could be beneficial. But I'll do my best to put some chapters in so that if you're sort of a speed learner, that you can sort of jump to the bits that are important to you. So first things first, we're going to go to the PreSonus website and we're going to log in, okay? Because we don't yet have Studio One installed. If you're new to PreSonus, you can sign up here and you can put all your bits and pieces in there and you can create an account. And you can do that for free. If you're not currently subscribe to Studio One Plus, but you'd like to maybe take part in collaborations with people, this is all you do. You just go to sign up, pop your bits in, and create an account. You've got a checkbox here as well if you'd like to receive, occasional PreSonus updates about new features, products, offers, and events, and all that sort of stuff. So if you're not a Studio One Plus subscriber and you think, well, I'll sign up to those because you never know, there'll be an offer, maybe a Black Friday, that sort of thing. It's a good opportunity to jump on board at a lower price. So we're going to log in. There we go. So we've got Studio One Plus, the sort of dashboard in front of us. Okay. It gives us all the options for videos and that sort of thing. So if you're a Studio One Plus subscriber, you're going to get like literally hundreds, if not thousands of videos. Teaching you lots of intricate different things more specific to what you might be interested in. So it definitely give you a leg up regarding a lot of different topics and subjects. So as we can see here, new edition, Studio One 6 Professional, and this is 6.5.2, okay? So this is pretty new. Now you'll notice my mouse has got a little yellow ring around. That'll help you track where I am with the mouse. If I left click, which is your index finger usually, it will turn blue. And my second button there, the right button, it'll just turn orange, and that will give us the right option. So first of all, we're going to go to products, okay? And there's going to be a lot of things that you see here. It's pretty overwhelming as a Studio One Plus subscriber. If you're coming to this for the first time, you're going to be like, my God, I get all of this? And the answer is quite simply yes, you get all of this. You get recording software, you get notation software, plugins, instrument samples, a whole orchestra, channel strips, you name it. There's a lot of good stuff. But what we're really interested in is Studio One Professional, so that we can get this installed, which is included as the Studio One Plus subscription. Now, we see a lot of things here, and I know that we could easily just simply click on this icon here to get to it, but this search here is there for a reason. So we can start typing in Studio One, for example, and it will give us things that are more relevant and filter out the stuff that we might be getting confused with. So first of all, we're just going to go to Studio One 6 Professional here. And what we can see here is we've got an immediate button there for the download of the installer. Now I'm using Windows, so it's automatically detected that I'm on a Windows machine. However, you might want to download an installer for a different system. So if you've got another machine that's, say, offline, so you've got a Mac, or you've even got a Linux machine now, we've got the ability to show all systems, and we can download the installers for Mac, Windows, and Linux. So in theory, what you could do is you could have 3 of these separate systems. You could have a Mac machine, you can have a Windows machine, a Linux machine, and you can install your version of Studio One 6 Professional on each of those machines and use them sort of independently. You can also, if you have, say, a second Mac or a second Windows machine, you can also install it on that, because as a Studio One Plus subscriber, you can install your version of Studio One 6 Professional on 5 of your own machines. That means that, you know, if you are working in a different city, for example, and you have another computer there, you can have it installed on that computer, and you can also have it installed on your home computer, but also maybe your laptop if you like to do music stuff whilst you're traveling. At the top here, we can see this little plus icon here that tells us that this is included in the Studio One Plus membership. And we can also see previous versions, and we can download the release notes. So we'll click on this now, just so that you can see what this actually looks like. So we're going to open this PDF, and it's telling us about different improvements, things that have been fixed, things that have been updated, anything that might be new. Okay. So we can see here in the version 6.5 release notes that we had the ability to start doing spatial audio recording and Dolby Atmos. Okay. That's probably going to be a little bit far ahead down the line. You know, if you're coming to this for the first time, I'd recommend getting everything good in stereo first before moving on to things like Dolby Atmos, because it's fantastic, but it's another thing to learn. It's like the old adage of, you know, learning to run before you walk. And in this case, we might simply just be crawling, and that's fine. We need to find our feet. So when we look at the previous versions, we can see the versions that were available to us before 6.5.2 came out, and we can see that we've got 6.0. Okay, we've got a drop down here, and we can view those iterations of version 6, and we can download whichever one we prefer. Now, for the purpose of this, what I'm going to do is I'm probably just going to download version 6, not the latest one, because what I want to show you is how things update as well. Okay, so we'll install it through the normal route, and then we'll go through the process of also updating it, so that you're not confused as to how we need to update things. So we're on a Windows machine. We're going to click on the Windows button, and we're going to save this into our downloads folder. And we can see the progress in our browser. Each browser will be a little bit different, but generally it will give you an indication as to how much is downloaded. And once that's downloaded, you're going to be able to access the installer file, which is just about to do now. There we go. So let's show that in the folder, just for now. And we can see we've got our release notes that we just downloaded, and we can see the installer here as well. So let's run the installer. So we'll double click that. It'll go black whilst it asks me just to confirm that. That's okay. And then we're going to say English for me. It's going to guide us through the installation here. It's pretty simple though. We've got our end user license agreement, which if you want to, you can scan through. I agree. And then we've got the destination folder. Now, we can see here that the destination folder, and we'll just see if we can zoom a little bit there. So it says Program Files, PreSonus, Studio One 6. Now, I would always recommend leaving it like this because the core installation of the program itself is pretty small. It's something in the region of about 256 megabytes. So, that's the equivalent of maybe, 7, 8, 9 WAV files, it's pretty small. So we'll leave that as it is, and I'd recommend that you do the same as well. And at this point, we're just simply going to say install. And it's going to install all the prerequisites that it needs, the scripts and all that sort of stuff. And then it'll let us know that it's been installed on the computer. So we can now say finish. So we've installed it now, and that's it. It's really that simple. So we'll just minimize these windows out of the way and see what we're left with. We've got this icon on our desktop, which is grand. But there's another couple of things that you can do to launch Studio One. And you don't need to necessarily do this just on the desktop. You may have noticed that I like to keep my desktop as clean as possible. Saving things on the desktop, including things like songs and other things, it's probably just not good practice. Okay. So if we go down to the start bar, there's no Studio One here, but we can search for it here. So we'll say Studio One, and we're given the option here, and we can pin it to the start. We can also pin it to the taskbar as well, which gives us this icon here handily. So when we do start up the computer, immediately we can see that the button's here, and we can get rid of this if we wish to keep things nice and tidy. Alternatively, it's going to populate within the start menu for you. And if we want to, we can click on that and we can launch it. So we get the end user license agreement again to scan through if we wish to. If you're happy with it, accept. And then Studio One's going to launch up for the first time. Now, if you've used a DAW or a previous version of Studio One, and you have things like VST plugin folders and VSTs installed, then this plugin scanner is going to run the first time through, and it will take a little bit longer the first time through. So don't be thinking to yourself, is it going to be this slow every single time? The first time it's just checking to see where all of the files are and all of the instruments and effects that you have installed. So this is actually pretty important if you want to use those moving forward. Now, I'd be interested to know in the comments as to, whether you find that the plugin scanner is useful to you, if you actually need to use it, or whether you find it a bit of a nag. We will go through some ways in which you can disable this plugin scanner if you're quite happy with the plugins that you have. It's pretty easy to do. It's a simple checkbox within the options. But we'll cover that when we get to the options menu. When this is installed, we're first just going to take a little bit of a look at the start page just to see, what we have available to us. And in that instance, we'll just go from the top left to the bottom right, so that we know what all these different things that we have available to us are. There will be some differences between different versions, but if you're a Studio One Plus subscriber, whether that's on a monthly basis or an annual basis, you should have everything that essentially PreSonus does in terms of software. Okay, so it's doing the last little bit of a scan here. So it's scanning 241 out of 270. So it's just doing the last little push here just to make sure. Now, I should state that I do have a lot of instruments installed, BST instruments. So if you're installing for this for the first time, this process would probably be a lot quicker than what mine is at the moment. But I think it's important to show that when there's lots of things installed, it's going to take a little bit longer just to check where everything is. Last push. This one might throw up an error, so we'll deal with that as it comes through. We'll have a little sip of coffee whilst we wait there. Let's see if we're getting a notification here. There we go. So we couldn't find a file. Okay. So the text file is most likely the problem with file permissions. So we can deal with that at a later date. That's not a problem. That's a third-party plugin issue. For those that don't know, third-party plugins can sometimes create issues or errors. It could be because of installing, reinstalling certain things, and that's absolutely fine. So we can move past these and let's just not panic about them, because we can deal with them as and when, you know, we have the appropriate time. It's scanning the audio engine and it's connecting to the interface, as well as checking through all of the different things like presets and sound sets and all that kind of stuff. There we go. So welcome. So you get this little splash message saying, you know, thanks for choosing Studio One. This is your start page. So we're going to go a little bit more in depth than this welcome message here, but by all means, do go through each of the different prompts here to help you understand. So let's maximize this. First of all, I think the glaringly obvious thing here is that we're being told that there's a new version of Studio One available. And as before, we can view those release notes just as we did a few moments ago. And we can press this green button to update now. Well, hang on just for a second, because what we're going to do here is we're going to have a little look about what we see in front of us, okay? Before we start clicking on buttons and sort of chasing the green button here. So at the top, we have the file menu, this white stripe that you see at the top of the page here. You'll see that some of the options are grayed out, and that's absolutely fine. It just means that we can't do anything with them yet. But we can see that next to some of them, they have these shortcuts. So these keyboard shortcuts enable us to do different things. And keyboard shortcuts and drag and drop within Studio One make it a very fast to use DAW. As you can see there, we have collaboration tools. We can join, share, send, receive, and unlink. And we can have a look at our recent files if we have recent files. But you may have noticed that within the start page here, we have a recent files tab here, which will populate as we create songs. We can view all of our past songs, and we can view projects and shows as well. So the recent files is just going to be based on what did you create most recent, or what did you open most recently. Songs, in the other sort of way, is looking at things by alphabetical order. Okay, so we can see this first file here starts with a 1. The next file down is dated and starts with a 2. And we can see there that this was the 1st of November. And then we can see that the ones that are in, they say like the 14th, 15th. These are in alphabetical order, not date order. Because we can see this P, practice 1, is higher up than any of these numerical names. So that's alphabetical, but numbers will be will take precedent. So if you've got a file name 01 new song and a song name 02 new song, they will be in that order, 01 and 02, from top to bottom. So with the file menu, we have this view. And again, we have lots of different grayed out options. we can view our plugin manager, which might be very useful on this particular page. So we can view our plugins and see what we have. And then we can see the Studio One menu. This will probably be the most used thing within the menu for most people. We have the Studio One installation, activation, backup and restore. We can activate purchased items and we can sign out of our profile. We can also make use of the Soundcloud client and the macro organizer, and optionally switch language if we feel that we want to switch from English to German, and then maybe to Italian, depending on who might be using it or whether you are from one of these countries and speak these languages. We have the keyboard shortcuts that we mentioned before, and then we have our options. This one for most people will be a very used option within the Studio One menu. And you can see there that we have the ability to use that shortcut key. So this is Control and comma. So if we were to do that here and press Control and comma, that brings up our options. There's lots of stuff in here which we'll cover shortly. Underneath that, we have this bar that contains those icons for the SoundCloud client. So if we hover over that, and if we do a little zoom in there, and we also have the macro organizer. The important thing here is that many things that you'll see within the menu here, especially when it contains an icon like this next to it, will often have something within the GUI or general user interface, which is basically the bit you use, the pictures, right? So you don't always need to use the file menu, and keyboard shortcuts will help you get there even more quickly, just like when we press Control and comma. We can bring up the appropriate windows. And then we move over to the right here and we can see this, this icon here. This is my avatar, okay? If I click on this, I can sign out and I can edit my profile. If I click on Edit Profile, it'll assume that I'm connected to the internet, and we can press that and we can move to my profile and we can change things like cover photo, the actual image itself. So we can change that, we can choose a file, and we'll go to Pictures and we can just pick the floating head here, upload now, close that out, and then it will update it for me there. Then we've got the Start button here, which is currently grayed out. So as with the File menu over here, these options are currently grayed out. And we can see the avatar's updated there now. So we've got the Start page, and then we've got the Documents button, okay? And this enables us to switch between song, shows, and projects, which is pretty neat because it's all within one button. Now, below that, of course, we've got the notification to update, which we'll do in just a short moment, which version of Studio One that we're currently using. And then we've got these three buttons here, which enable us to deal with documents. So we can create new documents. We can open existing documents via Windows Explorer or Finder if you're on a Mac. And then we have the ability to join, okay? So remember when we looked up there and we said File, and then we had Collaboration, and then Join. Okay, so it's a lot more navigation to have to do than just simply pressing this button. So we can join collaborations or workspaces that we've signed up to with other people, or ones that we've created ourselves. A topic for later on, but this can be very useful if you're looking to work with other people that also use Studio One. So if you take a look at the first button, New, we get a couple of options here. We have templates, and we also have user templates. So the first thing to note here is that we've got this record and mix. So it is what it says it is, essentially. We can record and mix a new Studio One song. And this is for a lot of people creating music will use this, will create a song file type. And then we have projects. Projects is where we sort of master and release. So we take a number of songs, or even just one, and then we can just add the final polish to that song before releasing it, digitally, or sending it off to somebody to manufacture, heaven forbid, a physical version in the form of a CD tape or an LP. And then we've got rehearse and perform, which is essentially a show page. This enables you to perform and rehearse your music along with backing tracks that you've created, and lots of cool features and options that you can use within the show page to kind of really create a performance, for the people watching. And then we've got a quick sort of play now. Now this creates a song file too, but it gives us, some different options. If you're a pianist, you can play using a virtual piano. If you're a synthesizer guy or girl, then you can use MyTi, and then we can use a guitar input for a real guitar. And we can play virtual drums using Impact XT. Now, one of the things that you'll notice that when we click on each of these, it gives us slightly different options, okay? So the record and mix, the master and release, the rehearse and perform, these have this big box here that says drop files here. And we can drop WAV files, MP3s, anything that's essentially supported by Studio One, so that when we open the document, we're going to have access to those files. They'll be nicely in the arranger for us. You'll also notice as well that we have the option to give each thing a name. So we could call our first song. And this is where it's going to be stored. So it's going to be under, at the moment, Users, Rich C, Documents, Studio One, Songs. You might see this from time to time in Studio One, these three little dots at the end. This is an option, so we can choose to store these in a different place if we wish to. As a rule of thumb though, and just through good practice, I would always recommend storing wherever your Studio One folder is located. You should find within that the songs folder. Save the songs within that songs folder. It makes sense. It's a song, if you have a project, save that within your projects folder, and so on and so forth. Good organization will save you a lot of headache further down the line when it comes to locating something that you may have misplaced, or something that you've left for quite a long time and you're coming back to it, maybe after 12 months or more. And definitely don't save them on the desktop. What we can also see here is we have the ability to make some changes to settings, such as the sample rate, the resolution, the time base, so that we can change between samples, seconds and frames, depending on what you're working with. For most people, they'll keep it selected as bars if they're doing music, and then the length of the song as well. Now at the moment, this says 30 seconds. Well, that's simply unrealistic. So let's set this to 5 minutes. And you'll notice that when I type in 5 or even 0.5, we can do 5 hours. Or if we type in 5 min, 5 min, it simply knows that you want 5 minutes. Okay. Dropping files here, we can simply drag things into it, or we can press these three little dots here and we can select a song file to import if we wish. What I'll do to demonstrate this very quickly is we'll just simply pick this audio file here, and you can see that it's telling us where it is, and we can say okay, and we're going to create that song, and it's called First Song. With the song open, we can see that the WAV file, the audio file that we wanted to include within the song, is now being added to it. We can zoom out a little bit by pressing the Control and the Shift key to see the whole piece of music. And what we now have available to us is the Home or Start button at the top here. So when we're wanting to go back to the Start page, we simply press this, and the Start page becomes visible to us. But what if we want to get back to that song after we've finished what we're doing? Well, we can press this Documents button here and simply jump back to the song. What if we had a couple of songs? So now that we have a few songs created, we can right-click on here and we can actually jump between each of the songs. Notice that when I right-click, the highlighted area will turn orange. Again, if I press the left mouse button, it will turn blue. So we right-click and change from one song to the other. If we left-click, it will simply rotate between those two open songs. And we can get back to the Start page, which is what we care about at the moment, because we're jumping a little bit too far there. But we're aware of what the icons do at the very, very top of the page. So the new templates enable us to create lots of different things, including PreSonus interfaces, templates specific to different interfaces such as the Quantum, Quantum 2, the Studio 1810, and so on and so forth. So if you're using these specifically because of the inputs and outputs that they have, you might want to make use of one of these templates, potentially to even create your own template, which would be stored in the user templates. So the recorder mix, this is just a standard new song. We created a new blank song with no audio or MIDI. So if you really just want to have your own backup for a blank template, you can certainly do that. What I'll do here is I'll make sure that we're at 48 kilohertz and we'll say OK. So we've now got our new song, and I could add a mono track, I could add a stereo track and another mono track. And I could go to the file menu now that we have these options available to us, and I can say save as a template. So I could just simply call this something basic like, a couple of audio tracks. Subtitle, new, description, not sure yet. And we can even add an icon if we want to. We'll add a different icon for this one. It will crop the image for us. We can say OK. And then we can go back to our Start page. So when we want to create a new one now, we have the ability to pick from many of our user templates. And obviously you can go as in-depth with these templates for yourself as you wish to. If you're unhappy with the templates, you can say right-click here, Show in Explorer, and you can simply delete it if you wish. We go to New. Our template is no longer available to us because we deleted it, and we can then start by doing a new recorder mix if we want to. Wherever possible, try to name your song or your show or your project before doing your work. It does make it a lot easier to locate it at a later date if you happen to make any changes. So giving it a name, even if it's a working title, definitely worthwhile. So we know how to create a new song, and the same applies for a project. We'll take a look at that just now. We'll make sure that the sample rate here is set to 48 as this is my system. And we have this interface here. We're not going to look into this too much at the moment. And then what we'll do is we'll do one more new and we'll do this show. And we'll set that to 48 kilohertz as well. That's all we need to change. And then this is what we have available to us, this interface. So it's slightly different. And if we click on the documents folder here, you can see that we can see the songs that are open, the projects that are open, and the shows that are open. And we can switch between them. So we can go back to that first song, carry on doing what we want to do. And then if we've got a project that we care about, we can be working with that at a different time without necessarily having to close or reopen anything at all. So let's head back to that start menu. And then we've got this option to open. If we go to open, it's going to open up the Studio One folder. Now this is where it's really important to keep things organized, because we have a songs folder, a shows folder, and a projects folder. So if we click in there, we can see that new project that we created. There's nothing in it because we didn't create anything. The same applies to the show page as well. If we go into the songs folder here, we can see that first song exists there. Inside there, we've got the cache, and it's got things like audio and images, peak files, that sort of thing. And the more that you add to it, the more will be populated with inside that folder. So if you're ever unsure as to how to find your file for a particular song locally on your computer, you can certainly do that. There's a few other ways that are probably better though. But this is where we want to open up a song. Let's go to our songs folder, and then we can pick a song that we want to open. And you'll see that this little icon here, which is the PreSonus logo and the file name, we can click on that to open up that particular song and load it. Then we have the ability to join. As we mentioned before, you can join workspaces. If we look at this one here, this is one we created over Christmas period, where you could take part in a challenge. So there's a number of folders within here, and we can see contributors to the challenge itself. But this could be a collaboration between you and another person. So in this case, this chap Ron collaborated with me a little bit on this Christmas song that I created called The Fat Man. If I want to, I can then select that. It'll apply the remote lock, and then it will tell me, how many files that it's going to download and what that total size is going to be. I can click on this chevron here, and I can view all of the individual files that are ready to be transferred. Obviously, when I'm ready to complete that action and get everything downloaded, I can just simply press start. I always find that checking the details chevron here, this drop down, definitely worthwhile doing, just so that you can verify the files you're downloading are in fact the ones that you wanted. So we'll close that for the moment and take a look at what's happening directly underneath. So as we mentioned, we've got the recent files. These are the things that you've opened or dealt with most recently. The song files, the songs tab gives us everything in a sort of alphabetical order. Then we've got the projects, which does much the same, and shows. You'll notice that there's a little folder icon at the top of the songs, projects, and shows. What this enables you to do is create folders. So we can create a new folder and say, old. I might have some old songs that I've created that I'd like to just put in this old folder because I'd like to just clear up some space and keep things organized. But I could also have a new folder called Work in Progress. So I could take this practice, for example, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say move to folder, and then we're going to move it to Work in Progress. Do you want to move it? Yes. Now it's nested inside this folder. And I'll do the same with this one here. So we'll move to folder, Work in Progress. And then for these ones, I think what we'll do is we'll highlight them all just to make our life a little bit easier. And we'll say move to folder, old. That's a lot tidier, isn't it? So we can see what work we've got in progress and all the old stuff. Not that the old stuff necessarily doesn't matter, but I think if you're working on projects, from month to month, or you've got multiple projects going on, you can actually just create folders for each of the projects that you're working on. It makes it easier to find your song and keep organized. And the same applies to projects and shows. Now we do know that within the work in progress folder, we've got something called practice 1. if we've got these closed, and just assuming that we've got thousands of songs, because that's how productive we are, we can click in this search box here and we can start typing practice. And it comes up for us, it filters it. And that will be another way to locate things nice and quickly. We can press the X then to close that out and return things to the way that it looked before. So depending on how many songs you've created, and assuming that if you're new to Studio One, you may only have 1 or 2 here, maybe as a sort of a practice session, so that you can get used to different features. And maybe your first song, because everybody wants to get in and get their first song done, The next thing that we need to look at, if we're going from left to right here, is the artist profile. Now, you have your Studio One profile, okay? You might have a picture, and you might have, an artist name, a website, and a genre that you particularly work in. But it could be that you're also working with other people. It's quite common for people that are, relatively decent at mixing or doing music type things that work within a band to help other bands out. Or you're an electronic artist with multiple sort of aliases, okay? So the first thing that we need to do is we need to look about adding an artist profile image. If we click here, nothing happens, right? We've got these 3 little dots. So bear that in mind. We select with these 3 little dots and we can pick an image. Now, it doesn't matter how big the image is because it will usually crop it for you, okay? We can see my name is there, and I'm going to put TV and games for genre, okay? And I can add a website if I wish to. But what I can also do here is I can actually add an artist. So I can create a new one. This could be an alias, a different artist that you work with. So we'll click the 3 little dots and we'll pick this icon here. We'll give the artist a name and a genre, and of course add a website if you wish to. And what we can now do is we can switch between these artist profiles, depending on who we're working with. Now, the reason why this could be important for you is that when you save a song, such as an MP3, you might be familiar with MP3s having images attached to them and metadata and that sort of thing. So you might actually want this sort of basic raw metadata attached to your exports. And this enables you to do that. So when you're working on your stuff, you switch to your profile. When you're working on your friend's stuff or your alias, switch to the different artist profile. And when you export those files, they're going to have that metadata attached to them. And it's a very good way of identifying them, not only for your benefit, but for their benefit as well. And below that, we also have the connect with SoundCloud. So we have this icon up here, okay, which is the SoundCloud client, but we also have this little box here, okay? So we can click on here or we can click on here initially, okay? What we're going to do is I'm going to click on here first. I'm going to say connect with SoundCloud. So we've got this big orange button here, which is clearly what we need to do. So let's click on that first of all, and it's going to open up the browser. You can choose how you wish to connect, whether that's through Google, sign in with Apple, sign in with Facebook, or directly sign in with an email address. I'll just sign in with Facebook here just to make things nice and simple, and that's going to connect me to the artist. If I click on that, I can open up the artist profile page and I can see songs that are being created, okay? So we'll close out those just for the moment. Now that we've connected with SoundCloud, we're going to see some stuff behind this window when we close it. So we can see number of tracks, number of followers, number of plays, downloads, likes, comments, and we can see other information that might be critical for you learning about what's happening on your SoundCloud profile. This is pretty handy if you're somebody that works within the digital realm with music, which is quite a lot of people these days, you'd be surprised. And then we're going to have a look just to the right here, the news feed. Now, some people like this and some people don't. I think it's pretty unintrusive and actually provides some really, really useful information. So you'll see articles, videos, updates, information, product news, all the good stuff that you might want to know about so that you're aware of what's going on within the PreSonus sort of ecosphere. Okay. So there's an article here, for example, How to Fix Phase Issues by Craig Anderton, who writes some absolutely amazing articles on the PreSonus website. But we can also see some best file storage preferences for Studio One. File storage and organization plays a huge role in the stability and performance of your computer, especially when working with large media files, which is what we do when we're working with audio. So Greg has done a video here that you can watch and get his spin on it and his opinion, and 9 times out of 10, 9.9 times out of 10, you can't go wrong. So have a look at what's available in the news feed, and there is quite a lot to go through, including videos from Joe Gilder as well as Gregor. So do take a look at the news feed when you get a chance. Now, dead center, setup. If you're not seeing anything here, okay, there's no picture of the interface or anything like that, and you're not getting any sound out of Studio One, we can make the changes here, okay? We can click on this icon. We can click on Configure Audio Device. They do the same thing, so we'll close that out there, click that, and they take us to the same place. And this is the audio setup within our options. So we can get there too by pressing Control and comma. With Studio One, there's like 2-3 ways to do most things, okay? And it's probably a good idea to learn, a couple of ways to do the same thing, if you want to get quick, in terms of moving around it. Keyboard shortcuts are definitely a way to go there. And we can see here the audio device, so I can switch between audio devices that I have available. Now, you can see here by default on a Windows machine, at least anyway, you'll have Windows Audio. And you can see this icon here that indicates there is no audio device connected. This is essentially like turning off your interface using Studio One. So it's not really a feature that you want, but it's good to know that it's there. Because if you open Studio One for some reason and it says no device, it could simply mean that you just need to restart your interface, or there could be an issue with it. Potentially, and that's where you might want to get in contact with the manufacturer to work out what might be going wrong. With most things that go wrong with hardware, sometimes just simply turning them off, leaving them for a few seconds and turning them back on generally fixes most things. But do check for things like, driver updates and that sort of thing, and firmware updates, which sometimes gets forgotten. Now, we can see that the device that's connected here is a Revelator. It's an IO24 from PreSonus. So that's what this is all being recorded on at the moment in terms of the audio. And we have the control panel for this, which brings up universal control. It tells us the sample rate that we're currently at, the block size, the input format, and all that sort of stuff. Okay. And we can click on the icon here, and we can bring up the IO24 interface, which gives us a bit of a mixing console sort of thing that we use to blend different loopback sources. So the device block size is mirrored here by what is being told in the universal control, which is exactly what we do want to see. And we have the device block size at the moment and the sample rate. For most people that are working with audio, you'll probably find that when it comes to what these need to be, you'll see lots and lots of different people giving different advice. It really just depends on your machine at the end of the day and what hardware you have available to you. If you have really high-end hardware, When it comes to recording, you could probably set this to 16 samples. So in this instance, lower means sort of a quicker round trip, so you'll hear less of a delay. A larger number here, so 1024, for example, is a larger delay, a larger round trip, so you'll hear more of a delay. You'll press a key on your keyboard or strum a string on your guitar, and you'll hear a noticeable delay, okay? And that can be really off-putting. So if you've got a machine that struggles with, say, for example, a higher device block size or even a lower one, set it somewhere, I would usually say between 64, 128, 256 maybe for your recording, and then when it's time to sort of mixing and doing all that kind of stuff, just bump it up to 1024. You shouldn't really need to go much higher than that, and if you are needing to go any higher than that, the results aren't necessarily going to be as great as if you were to move from 512 to 1024, okay, even though it seems like it's a bigger jump, okay. The sample rate, this is one of these things that people talk about, they debate a lot. So they say, oh yeah, you've got to record in 41, you've got to record in 48, 96, and so on and so forth. To be honest with you, 48 is a pretty happy medium. So it enables you to get good, decent fidelity for your recordings, you know, from a mic that's maybe hooked up next to a guitar amp or a vocalist singing, that sort of thing. It should give you reasonably good fidelity, much better than CD quality. Most media audio files are generally at 48 kilohertz. When you move into the sort of a 96 category, you'll tend to find that the file sizes that are saved, so these are the recordings that you make, will be exponentially greater, okay, by a considerable amount. It's quite a ramp up in terms of file size. And it's what I would call sort of like the point of diminishing returns, okay? If you've got lots of hard drive space and it's really, you know, not an issue for you, then by all means record at 96 kilohertz. But I would sort of argue the point that, you know, the average listener, the person that's listening to music, let's call them the customer, are not going to know whether it was recorded at 48 kilohertz or 96. So 48 seems to be like the happy medium, okay? Reasonable file size, good fidelity, and you're all kind of set. Underneath that, we've got the input and output latency, okay, the number of samples. This is the little delay thing that we was mentioning just briefly before. And then the release audio device in background, and you can see I don't have this checked. And that means that, you know, I can, if I wish to, listen to some music in the background, maybe as a point of reference or to, you know, I'm stuck on an idea, so I listen to a couple of different albums to get an idea of what I want to do next, to be inspired, or maybe jump onto YouTube and watch one of Gregor's videos about a particular way of doing something, you know. So I leave that unchecked so that I can do that. But if you're using it just for Studio One and you really don't want to be having other sounds going on, then you can check that box. That's absolutely fine. Now, the nested tab underneath that gives us things like dropout protection and block size and process precision and all that kind of stuff, okay? If you're new to Studio One, I would probably just leave this alone. It's not much you need to do here. The only thing you might want to do is check this button here that says Enable Plugin Nav. All that simply does is that when your plugin's not receiving a signal to process anything, it's just going to take a nap until it's needed again. And that's a pretty handy feature. It makes Studio One exceptionally lean and exceptionally mean. And then below that, we have the monitoring latencies. This is the audio round trip and instrument round trip. So it tells us how many samples, how many milliseconds of latency we would expect to see. I would expect that with most people that 512 samples for this block size here, with the round trip being around about 34 milliseconds, they probably wouldn't be able to notice that much. I mean, it would be a little bit noticeable for sure, okay? But in this instance, you might want to set the audio device to have a device block size with this particular device of about 128 to 64 samples. That way, you know, the difference between you pressing a key and hearing the noise through your speakers or your monitors, it's going to feel like almost instantaneous, you know. Now, with that out of the way, that's how you would just confirm that everything is set up, okay? When we look at configure external devices, that's going to bring up our keyboards, MIDI surfaces, maybe you're using an Atom SQ, one of PreSonus's controllers, you know, so that you can control the DAW, and you can also use it musically as well. Or if you're like me and you happen to use sort of a pretty standard Native Instruments keyboard or Novation or whatever, you would set it up in here. There are other videos actually explaining how to do this, but it is pretty simple. So we would simply click on Add, and then we get this window pop up that says Add a device with lots of options down the left-hand side. Now, it might be that you happen to have, you know, a Korg, and you have a Korg Nano Control or a Nano Control 2. So you could also have, say, for example, this mallet station from Pearl, or you might have a Seaboard Rise. And these are sort of presets so that you don't have to do much in here, okay? They're set ready for you, and you can use these. So you've got these Axis, the Virus TI remote, okay? So that's the Axis Virus Snow there, the little picture. And there's lots of different ones that you can select depending on the instrument that you have. But if it's not here, okay, you want to start playing your keyboard and all that kind of stuff, don't feel bad that it's not in this list, okay? It could be that you've got a new one, or you've got one that's just not been added yet. It doesn't mean that it's less popular. It doesn't actually mean it's more popular either. It's neither here nor there. So we're going to do a keyboard for this. We'd select the manufacturer. You could do anything. So I have a Second M Audio keyboard, okay? And I know that that is the code 49. So I could do that, add it, and I would say receive from, and if I had it plugged in, it would say code 49. And I could just select the code 49 there and then press OK. And that's it. The device will be connected, and then you should be able to confirm by pressing a key on your keyboard that it's actually getting the sound, okay? There are more things that we could cover on the external devices, but I think the basics here are really just the most important things, okay? Getting all your interfaces connected, getting your keyboard connected, and then lastly, at the bottom, if we haven't restarted Studio One for a bit, or we've just been told on Messenger or X or wherever you might be, hey, there's a new update for Studio One. Did you check yet? No, I didn't. So I'll click on this button here, and it tells me that there's a new version available. Okay, so I can update it from this button here. But going back to what we said before, we've got this big green button. So not quite like the big red button where you shouldn't press it. Big green button, we press it. So we're going to update now. And we've got this transfers thing downloading now. We can see that it says Studio One 6 installer, okay? Now the one button that we didn't cover on the top menu here is the transfers button. You can see it's animated now as we're downloading something. And before it's finished downloading, we'll just close that out of the way. We click on it, and we can open up our transfers and see what's downloading. Now, it popped up initially because we have this checkbox here that says show when transfer starts. You can uncheck this if you wish to. And what it's going to do now is it's going to install the newer version of Studio One 6.5.2. To do this, it needs to close Studio One, okay, first of all. So it's asking us here, do we want to save changes in our new project that we created? We could say yes to that. And do we want to save changes in our first song? We'll say yes to that too. And we'll say yes to everything else. This one, there's nothing in it. I don't care about that one, so I'm going to say no. Screen will go black just for a second whilst it confirms the actions. And then we're going to go next, like we did before, agree. Destination folder, leave it as default. Makes life so much easier because it means you can just press next, install, go. Right, let's finish that up. So we've got our icon here. We can leave it on the desktop if we want to, or we can throw it in the trash. Now, we can start Studio One from the taskbar here now. So compared to when we installed it the first time, did you see how quickly that bar went up? It was like very, very fast. It's not really taking that much time at all. Then it's just rechecking all of the presets for us, and it's connecting to the IO24, which is the interface that I'm currently using at the moment. It loads up, and of course, because we're starting Studio One, we have got our recent files. So our new project, our first song, and our badly named song, okay? If we go to songs, we can see that this badly named song is in here. We're going to move that to old. And what we can do is we can actually remove that from the recent files list, okay? It doesn't delete the song or anything like that. The same with the project as well. So if we remove that from the recent files list, the new project, and we go into our projects, this is our new project, and we open it up, right? So now that we've got this open up, we can go back to our start page and go to our recent files, and we can see that new project has gone right to the top because that's the one that we've last done something with, okay? So remember, we can switch between these two icons and we can get to these. And if I want to, I could say, right, let's remove that again, just to sort of prove a point, I guess. So we'll file, we'll save that. It's the same thing, we'll override it. And then we'll say close. Not close all, just close what we have available to us here. And we could do Control and W for this. So let's do Control and W. So we'll click away from that and we'll press Control and W, and that will close that for us. Okay, just that one project. And of course, it's now repopulated in our recent files. Okay. Now, I'm not working on projects at the moment, so we're going to remove that once more from the recent file list, but we can see we can open up with options if we have any particular problems with a third-party plugin. So we can say, right, don't load any PreSonus plugins or don't load any third-party plugins. Let's disable ARA support whilst we're trying to work out what's going wrong. Profile document loading and profile document saving. Let's open it up with these options, and we can do that. We can do that with any file, including a song. But we'll remove it from the list again. So we've got our songs, remember, we've got our projects and our shows. Now remember, we didn't save that show, so there's nothing showing in that tab at the moment. So we've covered the start page, I think, in a reasonable amount of depth there, and that should get you started in terms of installing it and getting familiar with what happens on the start page. The start page is definitely useful and enables you to switch between different profiles, as well as getting information about the newsfeed, keeping account of what's happening with your Soundcloud account, and making sure that your devices are correctly connected. Each thing that you do with Studio One, including making the songs, the projects, the shows, is all going to be accessible from here. Not only that, but we can also do things like make corrections to plugins and that sort of thing. So we can go to View and we can view our plugin manager. And in here we can see plugins that we've got installed. we can filter those out between native and VST3, or just simply native and have a look at what we've got available to us. If you'd like to hide something within Studio One, and that means that it wouldn't be available for you to drag into a song, which we'll cover in just a short moment, there are these little dots. Think of these as like little LEDs that basically says that they're on, okay? So if we didn't want to, for some bizarre reason, want to use binaural pan, we could press the little dot here, and channel strip, we can turn that one off. And the chorus, we could turn that one off. And now these won't be available for us to use within Studio One. Press them once more to turn them back on. So doing this doesn't uninstall them, it just simply means that you don't have them available to you. If you're the type of person that likes to be very sort of lean with the number of plugins and that sort of thing that you use, this could be very useful. If you're the type of person that maybe records guitar, you don't have any impact or don't do any drum work yourself, it's usually passed off to somebody else, you might only want to use Ampire, say for example, the analog delay and the channel strip. So you could, by rights, just simply turn off all of the other ones. And that way, you won't be distracted by all of the other available options to you. So just the channel strip, analog delay, and Ampire. And then we'll make sure that, all of the other ones are turned off as well. We can demonstrate that in a song very quickly for you now, before we move on to orientation around the song page, which will be very, very, very fun. So you can see there's lots of things installed here, but just by holding down the mouse and dragging down, almost like a paint tool, we can turn all of these off very quickly. And it does make life a little bit easier, this whole kind of, very user-intuitive interface. There we go. So all the VST is off, and all the native, apart from, obviously, the 3 effects that we mentioned earlier on. So the Ampire, analog delay, and our channel strip. So we'll just do that. Close that. Let's create a new song. Let's open our first song. See what happens, right? So it's exactly as we left it. And if we go into our effects, we just have those 3 effects available to us. Click the wrench, and we can see everything, right? But we can see that they're all kind of grayed out on the side here. So we could turn on the expander, we could turn on the fat channel, and maybe groove delay, because groove delay is cool. When we're done editing that, we can press the wrench again, and now we just have these things available to us. Just makes, getting to things a little bit easier, doesn't it, Anyway, that's it for that chapter, and getting familiar with the start page and getting installed. I think we're going to move on to the song page next. So let's see how that one turns out. If you've got any thoughts, comments, or questions, just pop them in the comments below and we'll see if we can get those answered for you. Again, trying to keep things as informal as possible. And if you think that it's not informal enough, or it's too formal, let me know. Anyway, I'll see you on the next video, which will be coming very, very soon. Take care for now.